Perfect. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hi, Stephanie. It's so good to see you. I'm excited to be here. So
I'm so
thank you.
excited to have you here. I'm so glad we've connected in so many different ways, right? Like I met you last year at North Jersey Chamber of Commerce, and you were so opening and inviting, and I was so excited to learn more about what you do. And lately, I've been watching you on Instagram and hearing all about these amazing master classes you're teaching. You're a relationship coach and you teach psychology. So I want to learn more about all that you do, and I'm super excited about your upcoming master class. So tell me a little bit more. What's going on?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited too. So this is all the masterclass is all about attachment theory. And so when we can understand our attachment styles, right? Our attachment styles are essentially like our subconscious patterns in relationship. And so when we can understand that about ourselves and how it shows up and how it impacts us in relationship, there's just like a whole new world of possibility when we can make decisions with intention and with awareness. So that's what we do inside that masterclass. We identify the styles and then see how it's showing up. And then I always teach a few tools to like make the shifts that will be helpful for someone in their actual life, in real life. So it's good
That's
stuff, really good.
amazing.
Yeah.
So when you say attachment style, it's funny you talk about that because um how do you determine your attachment style? Is there like a quiz you take, or is there an algorithm for that?
Well, there's definitely quizzes. You could, find a lot of quizzes online. But actually, the real revealer often of our attachment style is our biggest fear or our biggest core limiting belief. So we all have these limiting beliefs or core wounds from early childhood or really impactful life events. And that often narrates how we move through life, right?
Right.
So when we can really expose those fears and kind of expose them with love and compassion, of course. So when we can bring those to the surface, it really helps inform what someone's style is and how, like, because as humans, we think, feel, and choose all day, every day. We're just thinking, feeling, choosing. And so our belief system influences that. So when we can identify like what our limiting beliefs are and where our thoughts are going based on that, and decisions that we make and our emotions, because the research really does show that all of our emotions indicate, like all of our decisions are based on our emotions,
Right.
we can then intentionally show up in a way that's like, okay, this is what's happening. This is why I'm making these decisions. This is where this is coming from. And now, how can I kind of relearn or reprogram those patterns, those beliefs, update them, and then make decisions from a more empowered place?
Right, because we're constantly evolving. Like our relationships change over the years. But do you notice when you talk to people that they tend to repeat patterns? Like sometimes people will make jokes like, oh, I married my mother, or I married my father, or I keep
Right.
dating that same type of guy. Or they're like, especially when you're younger, different age groups talk a little differently, but like, oh, I always date the bad boys, or I'm always dating someone who's not available. Like I feel like a lot of times people identify themselves as a certain type of style and they keep, continuing that narrative.
100%. 100%. Yeah. But it's almost like a fish being in water, right? Like you're like, what water? Like you're just in it. Does that make sense? That
Ah,
analogy is kind of like we're so patterned in such a way, and it's so much of it lives in our subconscious, like in our non-conscious mind. So someone may joke, "Oh, I married my father," right? And they
yeah,
probably did. And like whether that's actually working out for them or not is always to be determined. But we do these things until something like clicks and we're like, oh, wow, until you create that awareness and you actually see these decisions that are being made based on this narrative. So, for example, like as someone who was raised by a single mother, right? I
okay.
was raised by a single mother. My father passed away very young. And so, we learn very quickly like life is hard. Emotions are a luxury. Like those are for other people. We don't have those. And, you just got to push through and tough it out. And so, like, that was my narrative through life. That was the story that I kept recreating. And even though like logically it didn't make sense, why would I keep making these decisions over and over again and putting myself in these same situations? Um, it's all happening on an unconscious level. So when we can bring that to the surface, right? That's the work that we do when we talk about attachment theory, when we talk about coaching, and just bringing this to the surface is like it just changes everything because you can learn these powerful strategies for change, different ways to like actually be with your emotional guidance system. So, like on my story, in my story, it was like in my late 30s where I realized, okay, I've checked all these boxes in life and what society says is success, right? I'm married, we have a house, we have nice cars, we go on vacation. I'd worked
Mm.
my way up in my career in my industry. I was an administrator. Like I had all these things that
Oh,
society
wow.
says are your success. Like you should be happy. I should be happy, right? Always like shoulding ourselves. I should be happy. And yeah, I had like this always constant pain of anxiety. Like I felt like I had an elephant on my chest literally for like a
Oh,
quite
wow.
a few years. And just like a lot of like heaviness in life. And I'm having a hard time like getting out of bed some days because life just felt hard. And you know, it just like I had this voice inside me that's like, life can't it like, is this life? Is this real life? Like, is this what's happening? Like, it can't be this hard. And so why was that happening? Well, a big portion of it was like I didn't know how to deal with myself, with my own emotions. I didn't even know they really existed. I would
Mhm.
drink them or eat them or like overspend or like all the over consuming.
That's so
And
true. Over consuming, right. I know. I totally relate to that. Over consuming. Yes. Yes. This story I'm listening to, I'm like, I've heard this story before. I had to write down check boxes. Like, yes, I've been checking every box for like the last, 40 plus years. I've checked so many boxes. Yes.
yeah, right? And it's a real thing. It's like, "Oh, wait, okay." And then, you're around people, we're all having the same conversations. It's like, I mean, you go to happy hour, everyone jokes about how everything sucks or everything's so hard or everything whatever, and then you go home and you just keep doing it, and we stay, like, in this pattern. And it's like, and again, this is always coming from so much love because it's like, it's just what we get into these routines. And so, um it's just like bringing this to the conscious level. I'm trying to come back to your original question, but we got a little
No,
like,
this is
oh, the
great because I mean
patterns.
we're
Yeah, yeah,
having,
the
such a great
repeats.
conversation. So yeah.
Yeah, so the repeats, right? And then when we're just like again swimming around in the water, like, oh, what do you mean? This is just this is just the water we know. So I think a big part of that is just like allowing yourself, I love that you call your podcast the reset because I feel like my life has been so many resets. So, just to fast forward in my life when I got to that point where I thought I checked all the boxes,
Yeah.
but I was feeling so heavy and so like like I don't even want to say distracted, just heavy was I think the word. And I had to ask myself some really hard questions, and I had to make some really difficult decisions. Like, am I going to have a child now? Like, am I going to start a family in this situation? Or am I going to like, what am I going to do with myself, like in my life? And so at that point in my life, I decided to get divorced. So I was going through my divorce and that was a decision I made, right? But then a
Right.
couple weeks later, like 4 or 6 weeks later, it was very wild how this happened. My principal brought me in and was like, "Listen, we're having these budget cuts and we're eliminating your job." So I'm in this
Wow.
super secure industry, right? And this
Sure.
happens to me. And that was part of like I was thinking, okay, well, at least I can sustain myself and my lifestyle. So talk about like a rock bottom reset, because it was like, okay, now I have no man, no house, no income, no savings, because I didn't even like I had no plan of backup for money. I was like not saving at that time. I didn't even think about that because I had earned a good living.
Right.
So, it was like at that time that I had to, like I said, really ask some questions of myself and do some learn some powerful strategies and did some really powerful work. And it's just like kind of changed, not kind of, it's my whole life has changed over the past like 10 years or so. And this is as someone who had been in and out of therapy. Like I studied psychology, I read all the books. But until we actually do that work on the inside and like really allow ourselves to be just radically honest and also begin to build that relationship with self. That's why I love and preach that so often because it's like when we do that, that, you know, influences and colors all the other relationships that we have at work, at home, romantically, with your
Right.
family. You know, all of those relationships are really influenced by the relationship we have with ourselves.
It's
So,
so true because when you were talking about, you said that you love the name of the reset and the podcast,
yes.
I have not maybe the scenarios aren't the same, but if just go off the boxes, you could say there's similar, kinship between the two of us. But I think there's two types of people in this world because something awoken in you, right? Something inner that said, I need to do something different. And you actually executed before you thought about all the things that could go wrong. Because as you were talking, I was thinking about how many women tell me now that they've seen my transformation. And actually,
Mm,
I was on a date with someone, and he said to me, you really did a reset in your life. You just did the ultimate reset. And then I was like, you know what? I did. I didn't think I was like the fish in the water. That's what you do. You're a fish, you just keep swimming, right, in the water. And there was something internal in me who's always been attracted to psychology. I actually am, nurse practitioner, but before that, I thought I was going to be an English teacher when I started college. I won the New York City Chancellor Award in writing, and when I got
wow.
to college, UMass Dartmouth, I had a English class, and he's like, "You are the most amazing writer, but you suck phonetically," and I wasn't, using all my punctuation. And he's like, you need to get that down. And I was really just a creative writer. So I took Psych 101, absolutely fell in love with it, took all the psych classes. And you'll hear me say a lot that those classes were like the best therapy I ever paid for. College, going to university was the best therapy I ever paid for. But it's something miraculous when you leap and then you're like, wait a sec, I didn't think about, the financial implications or
Mm,
anything. As you're talking, I'm like, women need financial literacy classes because a lot of people will tell me when they see my transformation, and I don't know if you get this, is that they'll say to me, I can't do it because of the financial concerns or these concerns, and I think I did kind of think about those things a little bit. That's what kind of held me in my marriage for so long, longer than probably I needed to. Many things, like you said, like, your boxes are being checked. We had a beautiful family. We went on nice vacations. We were financially stable. There was other things that, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus or anything like that, but there are other things going on that made it apparent it was time to leave. But I kind of did kind of set up all my ducks in the row, to kind of still check those boxes. And But a lot of people do. A lot of people will bring up all these negative concerns of why they can't do what you did or what I did. So I think it would be exciting for people listening right now who are contemplating a big change. And, I definitely don't advocate divorce. I love being married. I'm married now again. So I am all about love. I love love. I am not, strong in saying that you shouldn't have relationships. And there's other types of relationships, obviously, other than dating relationships and friendships that we'll go into. But, um, what would you say to someone right now who's like, all right, I'm not happy. I'm checking off all the boxes. I can't get out of bed, right? Um, how could they learn more about like their style and how they could evolve to this
mm.
change?
Yeah, it's such a powerful question because when we think about what making decisions, right, we kind of have two paths that we could follow through, like follow essentially is do I change my circumstance, right? Like if you're married and you're thinking about divorce, do I change the circumstance and move on? Or do I change how I'm experiencing the circumstance?
Ooh, I love that. That's amazing.
And similar to you, I love love. I'm a huge advocate for love. And it's like there is no judgment on either of those decisions. They're
Absolutely.
both options. Those are options. In fact, that's the most powerful. That's where really a lot of my work started was someone said to me, you have options. And I was like, wait, what? Like, it didn't feel like at that time that I had options, right? That was actually one of my first coaches was like, you have options. So at that time, I was just like, no, I don't. I just got married. People came to our wedding. Like, I have all these pictures and all these thank you cards. And like, it was like not that far after that I started thinking about all these things. So, you know, um, we always have options. And yes, in the work that I do is often like, okay, so do you want to change the circumstance or do we want to change how you're experiencing it? Or why don't we try a little bit of like, we could always do both. But I think
Mm,
it's always really important, especially like if you're invested in a relationship and that's, you chose that person for reasons, like at least giving it your all
I
so that
agree.
you, when you come to that decision, that you made the right conclusion, that you came to the right conclusion rather.
That is so
So,
true. I love
right.
that because I was married for 17 years and I'm not advocating doing that. Like you said, if some people know very quickly that maybe this wasn't the right
Yes.
environment or whatever, and it was a good environment for a very long time. So I have to give credit where credit's due. I have three amazing children. But I think that is so true because I think a lot of people will stay angry and unhealthy in a relationship that they have no intention of leaving too. I've met a lot of people who this is just the way it is. I've been with my husband these many number of years, but I'm not going anywhere because I want my 401k or, we have too much of a life together, but I'm going to make him suffer. And that is not a way to live. Or, I'm sure I'm just knowing from a woman's perspective because, the majority of the people I talk to who have this concern. But I think that
Yeah.
is so profound. What you said is that you don't have to necessarily change. If you're not planning on changing your environment, you still need to respect the relationships you're in and maybe change the way you're looking at things.
Yeah, because and really there is this power of one, right? Like we can change how we experience our relationship just by changing ourselves. So that is a really important factor is recognizing, empowering yourself with that knowledge is that I can change how I can experience this whole situation just with how I experience myself. And not only is that important because how do you want to live? Like you said, like, is that how you want to live? But also think about our health, right? Like this all
Mm,
impacts not only just on the surface, but go beneath the surface. Like I said, in that time frame of my life, I'm not kidding you, Stephanie. Like I literally felt like someone was just stepping on my chest all the time. Like my anxiety levels were like through the roof. But it was because I was not acknowledging how I was feeling. Like I was just pushing through, like powering through. Like I told you, it was just like, let me just tough this out. I have to make this work. Right. I have to make this work. And so there again, there's different paths that we can take, and they're all okay. We can accept any path, like whatever path you choose to go down is like that's the path that you want to follow. That's totally fine. I mean, there's always, of course, in coaching, like we ask a lot of powerful questions to get to those conclusions. And also
mm,
sometimes it's like, okay, when you put in a certain amount of work and you see what's happening with the other person, like you learn how to communicate effectively. We learn how to set boundaries. And we see how is the other person showing up now? Like, is everything still exactly the same? Are you still feeling like completely under met in these interactions and in the relationship? Okay, now where do we go from here? But people are very revealing. Like it's not hard to, when you start really showing up for yourself, it becomes so much more clear. Like other people's decisions become very clear, and then it's like, okay, that decision's for them, and now I get to make decisions for me.
right. It's like almost like you need that support and someone who's willing and able to listen. And sometimes when you do have someone who's a coach or, someone who is practicing and teaching, you're able to be an involved participant in that making of yourself. I think it's so important to do work on ourselves. We do work on our house. We always like, oh, I want to remodel my kitchen, like my, this stove has been here these many number of years, it's time to change it. But, we always think somehow, and I see this all the time in my work as a nurse practitioner, is people don't want to do any maintenance on themselves. And I always tell them it's like being a classic car. You know, it's like if you had one of these beautiful classic cars and you started taking it out, and driving it instead of leaving it, all shiny just for the car shows, then you would have to start to do that maintenance. There's that 10,000 mile checkup, and you have to change the oil. And if you're using it all the time, you're going to get new tires, new brakes. Everything basically has to be changed, and you got to shower it. You got
Yeah.
to, car wash. I mean, I'm bad at that,
Yes.
but I think that people think that somehow just by being human, we're like owed this renewal all the time, and that there isn't maintenance.
It's
Um,
so it's so interesting too, right? And I think a part of it also is like as we move through life and we mature and we are here on the planet, like in my 30s, in my late 30s, I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna like ride this wave. I'm like, and now sometimes, but then you have to think like, no, like I'm 46 now, right? So we're talking almost like 10 years. And now I'm in like the most beautiful and fulfilling relationship of my life with a man who I adore, who adores me. Like I have, we live a beautiful life. And it's interesting because sometimes people feel like at 40, like their life is over. And it's like, no, like when you really pause and think like, okay, you have at least, right? Like God willing, of course, we have like 40 years at least on the planet. Like when you think about that and you think about being like 80 or 90 years old and you look back and you think like, okay, how did I experience this journey? Like, am I being purposeful in my decisions, in my interactions, in my relationships? Like, is this who I want to be when I'm looking back and I'm like, okay,
Yeah, it's like the best days are still yet to come, but also the exciting thing is like how people say like today was the best day of my life, or usually they take that as these big moments like your wedding and graduations and things like that. But also there's these magical moments when you have that connection, even if you're at dinner with a friend and you're having the most awesome conversation and a good meal where you're taking your time and you're tasting the food. There are so
yeah,
many moments to be lived at any age where
yes.
you can renew yourself. I have people who come to my office for a regular visit that have nothing to do with anything, personal or anything like that. And they'll tell me met someone for the third time. They are like 80 years old, and they met someone after they had two spouses that have passed. They have the most amazing stories, and they like, I feel like I'm 18 again.
I
And
love that so
I
much.
know, and I love it too. And it's just by accident. I'm like, how did you lose 20 pounds? And it's like, well, I met someone on Silver Singles. And I'm like, I got to tell like people over like 55 about this site. And I've never, I don't know anything about it, but I hear this over and over again, or in my building at the picnic. And I have people who come to see me for their kidney disease who will tell me that they fell in love at like 80 years old. And they're so happy. Any moment in your life, even if it's the next hour, that you could be present and you could feel
Yeah,
happy. That is the best moment of your life, really, because really we're all in the now. I mean, it's nice to have all these memories and pictures, but they're all making up your now of who you are,
so
right?
true. Yeah, I love that. I love that you're saying that. The moments, right? Those moments.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we really live for, is to feel happy and healthy in those moments, because we will inevitably experience different traumas in our life and suffering, and that's just the nature of life. And the world as a bigger picture, goes through all these changes constantly. There's so many worlds going on at once. I always feel humbled by that when I'm driving and it's a lot of traffic. And I'm like, all these people are on the same road as me, and they
Yeah,
literally think their life is just as important as I think my life is. So that really humbles me. Like in traffic, I'm like, how are all these people thinking where they're going now is the most important place? It takes you out of yourself. So when you
yeah.
talk about attachments, I'm really curious because when I hear boundaries and words like that, sometimes I get a little nervous, and I'm like, it sounds like, you're stepping away from, and this is probably a totally wrong perception. So like maybe you're stepping away from allowing other people in. So how, because I hear you and it's so loving. So how do you set boundaries and know what your boundaries are without making it seem like you're rough and not in your feminine energy?
Oh, I love that question. That's so good. And I like that you're bringing that too, because I think that's a really good point that boundaries can sound like this wall, right? They sound like a brick wall, but okay, so I'm going to give you a visual because this is helpful for me. If you think about yourself as a garden,
Okay.
right? So you're this beautiful garden and you put a brick wall around it, right? Like this hard boundary. No one ever gets to come in and experience the garden.
Oh,
But
wow.
also, if you don't put any wall, right, then it's just like kind of a free for all, and animals may roam through, and people may just step right through the garden. So when we talk about boundaries, the goal is like this beautiful fence, like a white picket fence with a little space here and some wild, like a protective layer, but that's porous in a way that it's like there's this give and take. There's this understanding of like, this is my beautiful garden. This is me. And this is where I can lovingly draw the line and also allow someone else to experience me and I can experience them and we can have this relationship. But when we really when we create boundaries from a space of like, I've got my own back first, right? Like I can show up for me, I can take care of me, then we can set boundaries in more of a way that's like, this is what works for me. You know, what are your thoughts? What are you feeling? How is this impacting you? And then have a conversation and come to like an agreement that feels good for both people. So it's not just this open, like, no boundaries at all. You can do whatever you want, or this brick wall that keeps everyone out, but this nice, like, interdependent situation where you can have open and honest conversation and still know that like you have your own back and you can protect yourself when necessary, but you can also share what you need. You know, for a lot of us, we don't even know what we need, right? Like I didn't even know I had needs or that I was allowed to have them or that I could feel certain feelings or all these emotions could be okay. But when we learn that like, no, you know what, these our emotions are messengers and they just are here to give us a message. And when you can communicate that to yourself first to be able to be
Right.
open to that and process through that first, then you come to a place where you're like, okay, now I can have a conversation about it.
I like that because I'm picturing as you were saying that, I literally could picture like having this open garden and like deer like destroying all my vegetables, everything that I grew.
Oh,
Yeah,
right, right, exactly.
and there's no way to get it back till next season because you have to again plant and water and yeah. And then I see the same thing as like these secret gardens, that nobody even knows is there. And some people think you're hard and you don't have these qualities. So
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
like when we talk about attachment style, right? And attachment
Yes.
theory, so there's four different attachment styles, three of which are more of an insecure attachment style, and the fourth is a secure attachment, right? So we're always working towards secure attachment. But if you take, for example, we have an anxiously preoccupied attachment, dismissive avoidant, and what's called fearful avoidant or disorganized. So when you look at, let's say, anxious preoccupied versus dismissive avoidant, as far as boundaries are concerned, and coming back to our original conversation about our limiting beliefs or our core wounds, anxious preoccupieds will often have this like really overwhelming fear of being abandoned or alone.
Okay.
Dismissive avoidance, on the other hand, will have this really overwhelming fear of being trapped or like, um, having their freedom taken away, kind of like trapped and also there's like this defective wound, like the shame wound. So we have these two opposite ends of the spectrum, right? But imagine how that shows up in relationship with boundaries. It's like the anxious preoccupied is like, we can do whatever you want, whatever you want, whatever you want. I just want to be in the relationship because I don't want to be alone because I'm afraid of being abandoned. Versus the dismissive avoidant who is like, okay, that's way too much for me. Like I have my own things I need to do. You can do your own things. And then once in a while we'll come together because they have this fear of being trapped by the person and not being able to break free. And so they don't set boundaries at all because they just think that the other person should know. like this is where my line is. Am
Oh,
I,
okay.
is that,
Okay. I could see a little bit of
is that
that.
making sense? So, and
Yeah.
like, I'm totally a healing dismissive avoidant. I'm that person. I'm like, okay, wait, if you don't know where the line is, like, I have to go. I have to exit the situation. This is what like
You're
emotional
like, I'm not teaching
unavailability.
you.
Right. So then when I learn, like, okay, you know what? Actually showing up in a healthy relationship means that like first learn what my own boundaries are so that I can then communicate them in a way that's coming from love. Like, okay, I need this for me, but I also love what happens when we come together. Right. So I want to share with you like what's comfortable, what works for me, so that then you can make decisions accordingly and we can come together and have this like nice dynamic of being able to, I can share with you without feeling like you're going to trap me in this situation because I know that you can also take care of yourself. So then when we do the work to really like acknowledge and become aware of what our fears are, what our core wounds and limiting beliefs are, then like even for the anxious preoccupied, it's like, okay, where can you identify, this is the work that like we do together, but where can you show up for yourself? Where are you self-abandoning? What do you need to feel safe and connected to yourself first? And then practicing that and getting clear on that. And even, being able to do that in safer relationships that feel healthy already. So that way when they do show up in relationship or the dating situation, you don't see like that super clinginess or like the overwhelming need to just be in constant communication. It's like, okay, I'd like to hear from you at least once a day, right? I don't need to hear from you all day, every day, but it's important to me to know to check in, to know that you're thinking about me. So maybe like, are you open to sending me a text when you get home from work at night, even if you don't have time to have a conversation? Like having those kind of conversations. And then if that person isn't open to it, knowing, okay, being able to be discerning enough to say, well, this just isn't for me. But
Mhm.
when we heal that fear of abandonment or being alone, then you can do that from a place of feeling already safe in yourself and secure in yourself so that you no longer just say, okay, well, he didn't call me yesterday, so I guess I just have to, deal with it, put up with it, or go into like that over ruminating and the overwhelm,
Right.
because then you're no longer accepting that kind of behavior, right? So that's a boundary. After you've communicated what it is that you need, we see how other people show up for us, then we get to make a new decision from an empowered place, from a secure place of like, okay, well, if they're just not the person for me, then
Right.
does that
It
make
does make sense.
sense?
I was just thinking about like when people say like, how do you find, the right person or with dating or like, some people will say, you just have to, when the right person comes, all this is natural. I mean, and obviously certain parts aren't natural, but as I'm listening to you talking about the person's calling once a day, I'm like, I'm cringing. I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, like if I have to explain to you to call me once a day, it should be like you want to speak to me, and if you, so maybe you can learn very quickly, like, maybe when people are dating or something that like that extreme that you have to ask for just once a day, that for me, that wouldn't be the person I would want to spend a lot of time with, even because that would be too much teaching. Maybe if like, maybe, if it was like, just let me know you got home safe or something. Like, I think that's what's kind of worked in my relationship is that we were both very much just this is your first call. So like in my relationship for me, and not everybody, I understand people are in different places. Um, I want the person in my life who wants to share with me because it's just so natural. It'd be like, oh, something great happened today, or on my
Hmm.
way home from work, I want to share my day. And it was mutual, so that was good. So maybe we're always trying to figure out like the secret sauce, and I think maybe like hearing you helps me to see that maybe we have similar attachment styles, and that's, so we're able to give and take without effortlessly. When you meet someone, like how do you know, like, would you like, the guy who doesn't call for 3 days or something, people like calling their girlfriend trying to figure it out, or you and saying like, hey, I'm dating this guy and he never calls. Like, what's the difference? When is it worth teaching this behavior versus realizing like, wow, we're so different in our styles of love communication?
Yes, yes, so good. So I think, like, first of all, you get to decide, right? Like, you get to decide what works for you. And so that's I'm sure it sounds like, you're both coming from secure places already. So you have that healthy connection and communication. And so when when is it, um coming back to your question of like, how do we know? Something I always like to ask is like, do you feel like you're growing? Like, does this feel like growth, or do I feel like I'm shrinking here?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right? Because if we feel like it's an expansion of ourselves, green light. But if we feel like we're shrinking in asking for these things, or if we feel like it's too much for us for whatever reason, like, okay, why is that? What's behind that? Like, is there this fear of speaking up for what it is that you need? Because okay, in the beginning of a dating relationship, it might be asking for a phone call when they get home. But if this is someone you want to build a life with, right, we're going to always be evolving, like you said, which I love, and we're going to want to be able to communicate our needs healthily in a healthy way, in a
Yeah.
productive way. So even if the conversation, as the conversations evolve in the relationship, right? Like, what does it feel like when you are having that conversation? Does it feel like you're expanding in this? Or does it feel like, you have to kind of like shrink and hide? I think that's a really good indicator. And also, yes, just deciding what works for you and being clear with that, right? Like, okay, if this is something I have to teach someone, then this isn't for me. And that's completely for you. But just deciding like, where is that coming from?
Right. That's really powerful. What's really interesting is, as these relationships change, your relationship with your friends and family also change,
Yeah.
right? Because I think one of the biggest awakenings for me was, when you divorce or you change your circle a little bit, you're affecting other people. Maybe they don't want to be in that dynamic, the same dynamic, or have to, choose. Like now you have a couple who is no longer together and you have friendships that are used to interacting with you in a certain way. And, you have to now change that. And when you
Yeah.
introduce new people into your life, and there's friendships, especially women, right? We have all these amazing, if we're lucky enough to, to have all these amazing different types of women and friendships. We're so lucky to have all these relationships. And some friends you always get together with, like it's always like three or four people that always tend to be together, or there's those friends that you have one-on-one. So, how do you do this in friendships too? Because sometimes I know I hear friends say, I'm tired of being the one to call. It's a two-way street, I'm always
Mm.
the one initiating the events or hosting at my house or so on. So, can you use the same type of style in like friendships?
Yeah, definitely. The same kind of framework for making your decisions and communicating? Absolutely, because in that situation, right? So say you're in a friendship where you feel like it's like 80-20. You feel like you're always the person giving. Again, coming back to like, okay, first of all, one, have I communicated what I need in this relationship. So, okay, look, I love hanging out. We always have a good time, but like, I could use your help in figuring out where we're gonna go or what we're gonna do, and then like seeing where that goes, right? Because we always get to make a new decision. Like in every moment, in all of these moments that we're experiencing through life, we get to decide and then we get to decide again. So it's kind of even with friendships or in familial relationships too, it's like, what first of all, what is driving this relationship? Like, why do I keep giving over? And if it's an over-giving situation, like, why do I feel like that's necessary to come from me?
Mm,
Because this is often always being driven again by these limiting beliefs. Because it's like, okay, well, if I don't do all the work in this relationship, then maybe the relationship ends. Okay, what is my fear in that? Or is there a fear in that? So and the same in the relationship with like the divorce situation, right? It's an entire identity shift. Like you're not just moving on from the person, you're not losing the person per se. You know, you we a part of us, I don't want to. we lose our identity as someone in the relationship itself. Like there's so many things happening in any breakup of a
Right.
relationship. And the same is true of a friendship, because that is also tied to a lot of our identity. So just coming back to those questions of like, okay, why do I keep showing up in this way? If it doesn't feel good for me, like where do I need to examine what's going on here? Take a look at what's happening here, why I'm making these decisions. What can I do to communicate more effectively? So that's always a question we can look for and ask and find answers for. And when I do make an effort to do that, now what happens? What,
Right.
if I set the boundary or I
Yeah,
create
what
a new
happened?
boundary, right, through communicating, I set new boundaries and then I decide, like, am I okay with this? Am I not? I always talk a lot about like non-negotiables too. Like there are things that, okay, we can wiggle on this a little bit, but when it comes to something, is this a non-negotiable for you? And you get to decide that also.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think non-negotiables are huge. And I think it's easier, like with, French families a lot harder, but with friendships, do you notice cycles too? I find that very fascinating that I don't know, since you have such a broad background in psychology, but I saw on a podcast recently someone said that people go through new friends every 7 years. And I think sometimes you no longer speak to someone not because they in any way did anything wrong or used to spend a lot of time with them because maybe you were at a different point in your life, like maybe you had little kids together and you did certain types of
Yes, right.
classes, or maybe you were a runner and you used to run and now you don't run. And it's not like you're saying, I don't love you anymore. I didn't love that aspect. It just doesn't fit into your new circle. And there's certain people who will, you know, it just fades away naturally and nicely. And then other people who keep saying, will say things like, why aren't you calling me? Or,
Right.
why don't we get together as often? And you really don't have this grand answer for it. It's just the way that the pattern of your life is, you know, orbiting. I don't know. I'm thinking about the sun as I'm saying that, all weird, but like, just
No, no,
we're
no, it's true. We evolve, right? And people come into our lives at different times during different seasons for different reasons. And I feel like a philosophy that I live by is just like, okay, how can I love this person while they're here, while they're with me? And then some people we just have to lovingly let go. And I don't I don't mean that to sound like, insensitive or anything, but
no.
it's just like some things I feel like we have this unwritten expectation, right, of like how friendships should look or how any relationships should look. And
Yes.
those expectations sometimes keep us stuck in things that are just no longer for us. They no longer help us expand. And it's like, okay, if I can take an honest look at this and just like allow it to kind of let it go with love. And sometimes and we can love people from a distance also. I truly believe that. Like we can just allow some of these relationships, they just are no longer part of where we are, where we're going, and being able to lovingly let that go or leave that where it is. And, it's a process, of course. And sometimes I think, but I think we do more harm than good by holding on to things that are no longer for us. Because then it's like, who are you in that relationship when you show up from a place of like, I really don't want to be here?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, I don't really wanna be here. I mean, that is, like, not something that's I have a hard time living like that, right? Like, it's just,
Me
like, I'm not
too.
in integrity with myself, and I'd rather
Mhm.
love you from a distance and just know, like, that what we had was beautiful while we had it and let it be there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, let's say you run into a friend you haven't seen, and I'm learning this too, and I'm asking because it's just you've given me so many ideas. I had all these questions for you, and I'm just enjoying talking to you so much that it's just coming from like a place of just, in the moment, right? But like, you run into someone and, you haven't seen them in a long time, and they say we should get together. And I miss you, and why haven't we got together? And you don't want, maybe it's not that you don't want to, or it just doesn't seem to fit in. How do you say it lovingly, where it's like, how do you let someone know, you haven't reached out, not because maybe they did something wrong, it's just like you said, like we evolve and life changes and it gets busy. Do you say anything at all? You know?
Yeah, like what do you feel like would feel good for you in
Oh,
that
it's so hard.
moment?
I mean, I usually say I would like to get together, but I feel like there's people who do this back and forth all the time. They
Yeah.
tell you it every time they see you. And I'm like, you're really never getting together with me. And there's people who do it honestly to me because I've had it happen too, where there's people that you see many times in life that you really do like. You sincerely like them. You'll see them in an event and you'll say, we should really get together for lunch finally. And you do this dance year after year,
Yeah.
especially when you have children in the same school system or something. And sometimes eventually you do, and you form this great friendship. Um, but there's certain people just keep on apologizing and say, "I'm so sorry, I haven't called you." And you're like, just say hi. How about just say hi?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
You know what I love saying? It's great to see you.
it's great to
I
see
love
you.
saying that. I love because I mean
Yes.
it. I really do mean it. Like
Because people
it is
avoid
really
people.
great to
I've had
see
friends
you.
who say, I don't want to go to that get together, maybe because I don't want to see, so and so because I keep telling her we're going to get together and I just have been such a bad friend. Like, when someone tells me they've been a bad friend, it doesn't feel right. How about just, I wish you well?
Yeah. Right. Right. And I think a really good question to ask too in that scenario is like, is that true?
That's that. Do you really want to get together? Because I'm pretty sure the last year and a half when I've seen you or, you sent me a message, you've never.
Well, you wouldn't ask that in that scenario, but like, like really, like I've been a really bad friend. Is it true though? Like, are you really a bad friend? Chances are, like, you're really not. Your life is too busy. Like, things change. We evolve. Like, we have this expectation. We put so much pressure on ourselves, right? Especially as women, like we have to do all the things perfectly all the time, and it's just not realistic. And the more of us that are like that push against that or like, no, this is not, I'm not subscribing to this anymore. Like, I'm just not. Then it gives other women the freedom too. Like, you know what? I love you. It's so good to see you. And I know I'm going to see you in another year and we probably may not even get together. And like, that's okay. I can still know that I love you and you have a special place in my heart. Like, it's
Yeah,
just like,
that's really
holy,
nice, actually. And that's true. And I think I've gotten a lot more blunt like that. Like, yeah, I think I definitely, and that's part of doing the work.
yes, it
And
is.
having the confidence and that inner balance is to be able to say, this dilemma, like, you have a get together and you can't invite everyone. First of all, your house doesn't fit everyone. If you're blessed enough to have those many people, thank God to be able to invite somewhere. I don't feel that guilt because I know that I love these people and I want to spend time with them in different lights. And if they needed anything, I would be there for them and I would love to interact. But, then nobody gets together if you're like worry about excluding one person or another. So
Mm,
I do feel that healthiness. I do feel that, peace sometimes with saying, it's okay that I didn't. And then you learn like the other people's styles by the way they respond. Usually people are very understanding and don't confront you and stuff. Like I just had a recent wedding, so this was brought up a lot. That's why.
yeah,
So I had a
of
small
course, it's
wedding.
right. And congratulations. I
Thank
love all your
you.
shares and I love watching you. It's so beautiful. Yeah, your journey.
Thank you. And there was some concern, and thoughtful concern. Obviously, I'm
Yes,
making light of it, of who to invite and who I could invite, and there's a lot of factors that went into it. And most people who I didn't invite to the wedding, who I do know and have special relationships, wished me well, and said, "I'm so happy to see you." That you got married and I'm so happy for you. But there were a few people who were like, why wasn't I invited? Or said something. And, again, I feel very comfortable saying it was a small wedding. And honestly, I'm sorry. I'm so happy that you find so much joy for me and thank you and not feeling bad about it. Whereas
good for you.
uh,
Yeah.
myself 10 years ago, I would have been sick to my stomach day after day, and I would have let it ruin my time and ruin
Mm,
my situation. How do I not invite this person? What if I see this person somewhere else and they feel excluded?
yeah.
But I've noticed when other people are confrontational about these things, it actually doesn't make me feel guilty anymore. It makes me feel like, oh, maybe I made the right decision.
Yeah. 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 And I love that
Because
you
you should
mentioned that
wish
that's
people
the
well.
work. Right. That is the work because you know what? Nothing is personal. Like, have you ever
No, it
read
really
The
isn't.
Four Agreements? There's a really beautiful book. I think Don Miguel Ruiz, and he writes this book called The Four
Oh, the
Agreements.
four agreements. Okay.
Yeah, and one of them, it's a beautiful book. I'll share the title with you. And he talks in that book about how nothing is personal. And it really isn't. And so I also love that you're bringing mentioning the work, because when we can do the work for ourselves, right, then we can kind of really recognize, and talking about the subconscious system, right? It's like so much of our patterns are just on repeat. So how people show up to you with this, like, with however they reacted to what your decision was, that's really for them.
Mm, it really is. That sometimes I've heard the saying that, someone else's opinion of you is none of your business. But I don't,
Yes.
I don't love the none of your business term, but I do
It's
understand
funny.
now.
No, but it's a light way to kind of say a similar thing, which is like that really is for them, and it's just not personal. We have so many
Mm,
There's so many things influencing how we think, feel, and choose, how we react in situations. But when you can learn to respond, right, like you are, like, okay, that's just what they're going through, what they're feeling, but I don't have to make that inform my decisions. That doesn't have to be how I make my decisions. I can make my decisions with my partner from a place of love, knowing that, my heart is here in the right place, and I'm making these decisions fully and securely and for the reasons that are right for you.
right. And that's what I find to be all about, doing these resets and getting to know yourself and working on these personal relationships because when I speak to someone like you, I really do see the value in learning how to understand yourself better through these attachment styles. And what does a healed relationship look like from your perspective?
So, a healed relationship where two people are secure in the relationship, right? Where we can show up in secure attachment, is that having that sense of I've got me, and I also want to come together and build something even more beautiful with you. We can do that in a way where we can navigate through difficult challenges together, right? Like as a team, we can communicate honestly and openly and be vulnerable, because we're our own safe space, and then we come together with someone else in that partnership of knowing that they're also a safe space, and then we get to build even more from that place together.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Um, what if someone felt disconnected in a relationship and they want to get to that point? What would be like your first homework assignment to them? What would you tell them to do?
I love this.
Because we all need homework. We really do need homework.
Yeah,
I was just thinking that the other day. I was like, I'm doing all these amazing things and I still have to do homework and I still have to research. And just because you have a degree or a license to do work or taking a course, you constantly have to do homework to better yourself.
for sure, for sure. So I think the first step is just allowing yourself to be honest with yourself, like opening up to the idea of having a conversation with you for like 5 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be this huge overhaul of life entirely. It's just like just being with yourself. I'm a big journaler. I think journaling is a big, just a really good way to just connect back in with yourself and just start having some honest conversations. I shared my journal with you. I create the journal that I designed specifically for these type of conversations with ourselves. It's like meeting yourself where you are, just checking in, right? And allowing yourself to recognize, is there something I have to let go of? And then setting an intention for how you want to move forward. So I designed this to specifically have these prompts for, and you don't have to do this again. It doesn't have to be a big portion of your day. Just start with 5 minutes
Five
of
minutes.
just like opening up to yourself, writing a little bit, checking in, like a check-in. What am I even feeling right now? Like, what am I thinking?
Yeah, I feel like that's so important because you're taking your subconscious thoughts into your conscious life. Right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
because if
I
we're
saw that. I really did. I was looking through your website and I saw that you created that journal and I thought that was really amazing because I love journals and I love having a little book even with everything going on. I use my notes in my phone, but honestly, even as I'm sitting here, I'm like doodling on
yes,
paper because I feel like when you connect your brain to the pen and write it down, you're really in the present moment.
100%. There's something so like powerful and magical about pen to paper.
So good.
It's so good. So I'm with you. And I used to write and I would just write, but I really had like no, I feel like it's helpful for us if we want to move forward and make progress or make any change. And like you said, bringing it from that subconscious level up is just to have some clear ideas of like, okay, what is helpful for me right now to actually be checking in with, right? Like, how can I check in with myself? What do I need right in this moment?
Yeah. So, since we're coming to the close shortly of our conversation, I had a few questions I wanted to ask you
Go
about your
ahead.
coaching.
Sure.
So, what is one thing like, or something like that you wish people knew was the difference between coaching and therapy? Like, what's the difference?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I think it's very easily explained by talking about archaeology versus architecture. So when you're a therapy situation is like more of that archaeology where it's like the dig and the opening of up of all the things that have been. Whereas in coaching, we're really looking at you as a whole, healthy, capable human being right now, wherever you are, and how do we want to move forward? Like building from there and moving forward to the architecture part.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's really amazing. And is there any like relationship myths that you want to bust? Like, is there anything that people think, that, you were talking about like all these check boxes. I love that. I'm going to take that with me today when we leave this conversation. But is there any like myth that people think?
Mythbusters. Okay, well, I think first of all, we have to learn to question everything because essentially like everything is a myth, right? Like nothing is really factual. So,
So
in so
true.
many ways, in so all these
Ironically, it's
things
so
we
true.
say, right? It's so true. There's so many phrases that like when you hear people say them like, why are we still saying that? Um, but a myth for a relationship, oof. Well, I think coming back to kind of like that there oh, I know. That when you meet the one, that this whole idea of the one is what's coming to me right now. There's so many we could talk about. We could have a whole series on this. But the
Maybe we
idea
will.
of
Maybe we'll.
I would love that. I would so love that. The idea of the one, right, is like that this magical person is just gonna ride into your apartment and jump off his horse. Especially like right into the apartment, right? Because a lot of us think like, oh, this magical person is just gonna appear in front of me, and I have to put in like, I don't have to do much on the effort side. But um, again, this is all just driven from lots of fear and
Yeah.
but the limiting beliefs. But
Yeah, it's
the
funny
idea
because
of the
me and my
one,
husband have this little tidbit back and forth. What'd you say? He's like, I just have to say, you just have to meet the right person. I'm like, no, you don't. I did all this work, and you did too.
right?
And like,
And
give
just like
yourself credit.
yes, absolutely, because
I'll know the
had
one
I
when I
met
find when they show up, right? You're just gonna know. Like,
and
but I
had
felt
I
like it
met
kind of happened
my
that way, but I felt like I had done so much work, like it would never have happened.
uh, Stephanie, if I had met my person right now, my partner, 10 years ago, or even maybe even five, no, 10 years, I wouldn't have been ready for him. Like I wouldn't
Right.
even known he was for me. So it's like this idea that like, okay, just being open and understanding, but with a discerning heart. So again,
Right.
knowing that like you're not going to just be this garden with no fence around you, but having that structure by which you want to live and then showing up in the world that way, you have so much more of an opportunity to be open to interactions and partnership or relationship. But like this idea that there's just one person that's going to come along and like set your butterflies are just going to start flying everywhere and rainbows are going to pop out of the sky, like I wish I would love for that to be true, but it just doesn't happen that way. And so many things that are our indicator of like what love may be is often just our nervous system in like dysregulated state. So, those butterflies and whatnot and all those things that we think we're attracted to are often not even helpful for us anymore. So questioning that too is like a big part of it. Just recognizing like, what is it that I'm looking for? What do I keep repeating? And why am I still in the, yeah, a lot of bringing things to the awareness level, but the idea of the one, I
Absolutely.
think.
So how can people find you? Let's shift this to, we're closing out here, and how can people know more about what you do and connect with you?
Sure. And so I do have my website, which is theleveluplifestyle.com. And I'm on Instagram right now at the Mary Howard. And I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but I am there and I am present. And you can contact me through either one of those sources. Yeah. And
Awesome.
I'll
And
share a link with you for the journal because I think that's a really good starting
yes,
point for anyone who's just like, where do I even start? A lot of times women will come to me and they're like, I don't even know where to start. And I'm just like, you making this call right now is you starting. Like, just have the conversation. I always offer my first clarity call is always there's no charge for that. And it's just a really beautiful conversation to get clear like on where you are and where you want to go. And whether they decide to work with me or not, that's not what it's about. It's really just about them getting some clarity on where they are. Because like we were saying earlier, we just go through these routines and then all of a sudden 10 years later, you're like, how am I still doing this? So
right.
just taking a few minutes, whether it's 5 minutes with a journal or setting aside an hour to have a conversation, that's how we start. It's just that small next step.
Well, thank you so much for
Oh my
being
gosh,
here
this was
today. I could talk to
so
you
fun.
forever.
Agreed. I totally agree. Yeah. This is really, really awesome. So thank you so much. I feel like this time in the world and society and
Yes.
everything is like there's just so many things happening, and to have this type of beautiful and powerful and empowering conversation, just like talking about how we continue to evolve, is just such a blessing on so many levels. So thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. I
Have a
appreciate
great
you.
day. Talk to you
Thank you.
soon.
Bye.